Hi, welcome to the Art Studio Inc. My name is Andy Coughlan, and we're here today to talk with Dario S. Bucheli, who is the winner of TASI 2020. And as the winner of TASI 2020, he has this amazing exhibition, Semantic Web, which is currently on display through the end of June. And Dario, I think let's start with this piece right here. This is a piece people would be interested in. They've seen it before in a smaller version as part of the invite. And one of the things that I heard from people was like, well, what is this? Is this a survey? Are we supposed to do something? But that's not what your stuff's about. Why don't you give it a little bit of background on this piece?
Sure. So what I can tell you about this piece that is also the case for the other works in the exhibition is that they are paintings of pictures of paintings as I find them on the internet. And so part of the process begins with me doing visual research on my phone. And I'm doing this on my phone like many of us are, and then coming across a composition that includes pictures of artwork, of other people's paintings, but it also shows different elements that are part of the internet environment in which these images exist. And so what I find on my phone, that's what gets translated into the canvas when I get to painting. And so that's why we have certain sections like these three divisions that include works by other artists, and then you have other elements like the pop-up that comes up, and it's asking you to take a survey, or it asks you, do you accept these cookies? Do you want to put in your email address to sign up for the newsletter? All those different things that become part of the experience.
So would this have been three different pieces that were part of a thing, or was this one piece? Obviously, we don't get to see it because, annoyingly, the pop-up, or for us in real world, the pop-up has kind of obscured the image. And what is it about that then? What is it about these pop-ups that come in and infringe upon the artwork that you're trying to look at? What is it that appeals to you about that?
Right. It really began when I was thinking about what it's like to look at paintings in person versus looking at them online. And really thinking about the fact that it's really not the same kind of experience at all. It's its own type of experience. It's not good or bad, it's somewhat limited. And so even though the technology like a phone or a computer can give you access to be able to see some of these works, ultimately the experience is not quite the same.
Well, I want to get onto the surfaces in a second, but I know that these are acrylic, right?
Correct.
Acrylic paint. Is there a reason you use acrylic rather than, say, oils or something like that? Mm-hmm. For me, it seems as though these images relate to a very modern experience, and I've found acrylic is a very modern sort of medium. But especially, why do you choose acrylic paint?
Right, I think that has something to do with it, the type of quality, as well as the place that acrylic paint has had in the terms of the history of painting. And also, in another way, acrylic paint also has somewhat of a plastic feeling as well. Which you don't really get with oil paint, and so that seemed fitting. But also on a practical note, I am somewhat of an impatient painter. I like paint to dry very quickly, which is something that acrylic paint does, as opposed to oil painting, which takes much longer to dry. So I like to work through the pieces relatively fast.
I know where you're coming from. I like the same thing with the speed of it. Let's move on to another painting, because I think one of the things that I'm interested in your work too is how much you play on the audience's interaction with the piece. And I think this next piece we're going to look at can really show people what we mean. So I'm particularly drawn to this one based on something we talked about. And this one I believe is called Zoom. And I like here, one of the things, you've got this small panel that shows part of the image that is zoomed into. But what I really it captured my attention with this piece was how varnished, how shiny this is. And that's something to do, I believe, with the way you want the audience to interact with the painting, isn't it?
Correct, yes. And like you mentioned, throughout the different works in the exhibition, I'm very careful in selecting the parts that are going to get varnished. And so essentially that gives the surface a very shiny finish to it. And then some other parts, sections of the canvas are left unvarnished, and so they have more texture, a more matte kind of finish. And what I find interesting in working in that manner is that it allows me to interact with the piece in a different way, and that's something that is offered to the viewer as well. And that you have to look at the painting and from certain angles, and you get to see the reflection of the light around the space, or you get to see your own reflection of the painting as well.
How did you get into this idea? What was it about this particular idea that made you start the series?
Yeah, so this series have been ongoing since 2019. It's been some time, but really the roots of it go further back for several years. What I've been thinking about sort of the meeting point between art and technology, and how our experience of art is shaped by different internet technologies. And so that's sort of the overarching idea. But really when I started narrowing and focusing and inching my way towards this body of work, I really started thinking about the fact that most of the art that I was experiencing on a daily basis was coming through my phone, through platforms like Instagram or gallery websites or newsletters that I received from different galleries and museums. And so I thought it was curious, and I noticed that it was something that was shared by my peers as well. You know, we were all looking at a lot of art, but most of it was on our phones. And so, I mean, I tried to go to museums and galleries as much as possible, but really it's just, I get to consume a lot of art through my phone. And so I really started thinking, you know, like what does that mean? What is that like? How is that different than looking at artwork in person? And so that's where I found that that is something that I found interesting. It got me thinking about what a painting is and how we understand a painting. What do we use psychologically and physically as well.
The beauty of online is that you can zoom in and all this kind of stuff, but it's still not the same. You know, we feel that we have a much better understanding of the piece because we can zoom in and see individual brushstrokes and stuff, but there still isn't that sort of connection that you get seeing it in the flesh, as it were. And let's move on to another one, because I want to talk about how ironic it is that you're doing these images that are about looking at pieces online. And for many people, especially watching this video, this may be the only way they see it. So let's talk about that.
Sure.
Thanks. So this is a piece, you said this piece is a newer piece? Is this one of the last ones in your series?
Yes, I completed it this year, 2021.
Okay, good. Now I noticed that a lot of the other pieces are, you've got close-ups of paintings and stuff like that. This one obviously is different. This is more of a, I guess a museum's installation thing.
This piece incorporates artwork, paintings, drawings and such by other artists that I personally admire. They're artists that many of whom I've met online. We've exchanged messages and emails, and we've had conversations, and they've had an impact in my practice in one way or another. That being said, the works that I include in my paintings, I've never seen in person. I've only ever seen them online, and so there is that distance that I was talking about earlier. And so installation shots is another aspect, another role that photography plays in trying to mediate between the viewer and the work.
On the others, I don't know how big this piece is that you're painting. Just because you're painting it 6 feet across, the image may very well be this small. But with this, at least with an installation shot, we have some kind of sense by the height of the ceiling, how that we can relate to it.
When you're looking at a work of art, regardless of how large it is, it's very small, like you say. Yeah. It's very small on your computer screen or your phone, and so that aspect also is lost, almost lost in translation.
Yeah. How honest are you with the reproductions on the pieces, like these small pieces here? That's a lot of work. Do you do your very best to make this as clear as possible?
Yes, I do, and I do have to ask myself different questions as I'm working. What am I trying to be most faithful to representing? Ultimately, it is the works that are incorporated in my paintings, but really, I'm not painting those paintings per se. My paintings are about the experience of looking at the works on your phone, on the computer, and so that's why you have different elements that come up, like this pop-up like the one we had talked about previously, that are all part of the experience. And so I try to be as faithful as I can with those. And then as far as the images and the works that I incorporate in my paintings, I try to be as faithful as I can. That being said, again, I've never seen these works in person. I can only get a certain idea of what they look like from the image that I'm using as a reference. And so I try to stick with that as much as possible, knowing that much of it is going to be lost. That's because I don't have access to those works. None of us do when we're looking at them as photograph.
Okay. Well, if that doesn't tempt you to come and see the show, Semantic Web by Dario S. Bucheli at the Art Studio through the end of June, I don't know what we can do. This is a wonderful show. I've been very impressed with the work. I was impressed before I saw the work. I was impressed with the digital images I saw, but to come and actually see the paintings, I feel that this has been a really, really interesting show. And congratulations on your win last year, and I'm sure we'll see you around a lot more.
Thank you, appreciate it.